we're going to now get started with our pre-med panel. Our panelists include Aaliyah, Shannon, Sophia, and Tanaya. So to start off, can each of you please introduce yourselves? And we can go in order of alphabetical order of first name. So Aaliyah, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aaliyah. I'm a 2017 graduate of UCLA, human biology and society major.
Cool. Shannon, would you like to go next?
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon. I'm currently a student at UC Davis. I'm taking global disease biology with a minor in religious studies, and I'm currently on track to pursue medicine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia. I just graduated from UC Davis this June. I graduated in neurobiology, physiology, and behavior. Right now, I'm taking the Mcat 2 weeks from today. As well, I'm applying to med school.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanaya Koyupara. I am an undergraduate student at UC Berkeley, and I'm double majoring in molecular and cell biology and social welfare. I'm also on the pre-med track, and I'm super excited to be here.
Great. So our first question is, what are ways to prevent burnout throughout the 6 to 12-year process of obtaining a medical degree and starting practice?
So I would say it's definitely hard to balance everything. I think especially for me, since COVID, I was scheduled to take my MCAT in April, and it got rescheduled till July. So I've been studying for it since January. And, when I was studying January, I was studying to take in 3 months. It was very intense. And that's just an example, but it's definitely hard. And sometimes what I struggle the most is like the guilt of not being productive and taking a break. But that's definitely important. I think like what I can speak most about is right now studying for the MCAT, but I think prioritizing what makes you feel human, and not just like something that you need to study for. Like if you're like watching a show or like going outside, I think finding what sparks joy in pursuing that, even if it's like 10 minutes a week or a day, you have to find a way to create a balance, because it's going to be a long road and you have to be able to handle like the anxiety or the stress that comes with it. So it's for sure a lot of like a journey to figure out what works for you and then figure out how to practice that. But I like to watch TV a lot. I like to watch shows, and I like to hang out with my friends and my boyfriend. So
I can add on as well. I think just referring back to the entire years of wait, I think when they say that you're pursuing medicine, it's kind of scary because with the 4 years of undergrad, you do 4 years of medical school, and then after that you have to do residency, and after your residency is when you're actually going to become a doctor, but then you can like do more programs and more fellowships. So it's definitely scary, like thinking about the overarching goal that you're trying to reach. And even now, like me being I still have like a year to go before I graduate, it's still scary for me to like think about it, and it can cause burnout. But I think being honest and like recognizing yourself, and being in medicine, like you always have to think that you should always be like the perfect student. Like you have to have straight A's, you have to be in all these orgs, you have to be volunteering in clinic, you have to be doing research, like you just have to be doing so much things. But admitting to yourself that you don't have to be doing these things and just find the things that you're passionate about, you wouldn't get as burnt out if you really love what you're doing.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, echoing from the other two panelists, they're spot on the fact like you need to really find that balance. It's really easy to get overwhelmed with all these things that you think you should be doing because you're pursuing this track. But I think one of the most important things is to join and do stuff that you're passionate about, like Shannon was saying, and really find those outlets that bring you internal joy. Like for me, it's writing. That's why I work with a magazine, because it's something where I'm still pursuing something that I love, but it's also turning into an outlet for me. So finding that kind of like those things that you love to do is definitely going to help prevent that burnout, which is really easy to fall into.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something that physician told me. He was in residency at the moment, and I was just talking to him about my MCAT at the time, and he was like, medicine is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Like I said, it's very long, right? So what matters is that each day is better. You don't have to be perfect. I think in the pre-med realm, it's always like what Shannon was saying about you have to do this, you have to have straight A's, and like being honest, it is a bit of a myth. Like I'm applying to medical school and people are like, my GPA is not the highest, and they're like, you're fine. I think a lot of it is everyone is so stressed and everyone is talking like a little bit misinformed. And so you get this anxiety of like, I have to do all these things. But in reality, you just have to like be better than you were yesterday. And that's how you're going to be able to go through, because you can't just like work super hard and then you crash, right? Like this is like a lifelong journey that you need to like nurture yourself and your path. So definitely finding things you love.
Yeah, I'd have to piggyback on that. Sorry, I got disconnected earlier. But yeah, everyone said exactly what I was saying. Definitely finding things that give you an outlet to express yourself, and making sure that along the journey, like when you're in your undergrad, you're participating in clubs and different activities that you love and that you're passionate about. But you want to make sure you're like really investing in things you love and your passions along the way, just something that you can tap into and that keeps you motivated.
Great. I loved hearing all of your responses. So we're going to move on to the next question, which is how did you choose what concentration of the medical field that you wanted to pursue?
I could go first. Well, honestly, for undergrad, I think for everyone here that isn't like applying to medical school or like isn't close to graduating yet, I feel like you should focus more on like your application, because I feel like you get more experience once you're in medical school. Once you're in medical school, you do rounds and that's where you get exposure. But like for me, for example, I really like saying that I really want to go into surgery, and something that my answer for that is that I really like things that are really hands-on. So I work at an anthropology lab, and I get to deal with like dead matter and like, literally mummies, and I really love doing that, and it's kind of something that translates to surgery. But once I get into med school, I never know when I'm doing those rounds, like I might fall in love with something else. So you honestly never know, but go with what you really like right now and then just keep going for it.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. Go with what you know, and but still have an open mind. For me, I've been interested in. Well, originally, I was interested in surgery as well, and then I participated in a at a transformative medical program at Stanford in high school, and I found out that I really wanted to go into cardiovascular surgery. So just being involved in different activities will help steer you along the way. And I've had different experiences of shadowing doctors or doing some kinds of research that helped me kind of assess which field I like best, even scribing. So it's just those experiences along the way that will help you decide that.
Exactly. I think the biggest thing is being open that it might change over the years. I definitely, like, when I look back, I remember at one point I want to be a neurosurgeon, and then another point like general surgery, and like it really changes as you go and try new things. Right now at this point in time, because again, I feel like it could change when I go try something new or as we enter into med school, because of course I'm still an undergrad. um, you need to be open to it. Really, the fact that it will change. I'm going to be like honest with you. It is going to change what you find that you're interested in. And you shouldn't be afraid that, oh, just because you don't have this one set path or one set idea, this from A to B, you're only going to go to this point B, just because you are kind of varying or like basically going off of that like path you set for yourself. Don't let that like hinder you, or don't let that make you think like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be pursuing this field, like I don't even know what I want from this field. Definitely don't let that become a thing. Really be open to change and know that your interests are going to change as you grow older. For me, I volunteered at a women's clinic, and I found that I really was interested and passionate about women's health, especially, and pediatric care. And so that's something I'm considering going forward. So it's really going to change as you keep going and trying new things and being part of different organizations.
Yeah, I don't know what I want. I know things that I really value and like in a future job as a physician, like I want to be able to develop relationships with my patients. And I also really like women's health and I love kids. So for me, I always go back and forth, but I kind of want to go into med school, like not having a preference and really experiencing everything and then figuring out what I like when I'm there, just because for example, I volunteered in an ecology department in the hospital. And even though I loved being there, I was like, this is not for me. It's too sad. And I really love neurobiology, and that's why I picked my major. But even when I saw patients who had like neurological problems, like it was a little like it wasn't too much to handle, but I didn't feel as comfortable as I do when I volunteer in a clinic at Davis, where I love like the primary care aspect and I love dealing with kids. So I think it's normal not to know. Like you think everyone has everything figured out, but you realize that everyone's just trying to like do their best. And I think like if you don't know or if you're super sure, just keep an open mind. And like when you get into med school, you get to fall in love with like what's meant for you.
Awesome. Thanks. That was super interesting, and I loved hearing what you all had to say. So, since most of the audience are high schoolers, what are some things that people can do in high school in order to prepare for a career in medicine?
So I think the best advice for when you're in high school, if you know you're definitely, pursuing a career in medicine, definitely first you want to have great grades, like be excellent in school, and continue to build yourself, your well-roundedness, and stay involved with different activities. And like we said from the last question, keep an open mind with medicine and what you want to do in medicine and this journey. But definitely have some volunteer experiences. They don't necessarily need to be in medicine in high school, because I know that's a little bit difficult to do. But definitely try to find some experiences if possible to validate that passion of yours.
To add on to that, I think really, like we talked about earlier, medicine is really more of a marathon. It's not a sprint. So starting to develop those great study habits from high school, seeing what works for you in high school in terms of like studying and how you best learn information is a huge plus, because that way, especially since college is a whole new environment, now all of a sudden you're kind of basically on your own. You have to take care of yourself. You have to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable. You're getting sleep. You have all these new opportunities. Really having your study habits down before you enter, or even during college, it is important to continue to develop those skills. But really in high school, starting to understand how you learn best will be really helpful going to college and going to medicine in general. Other than that, like Aaliyah said, there's obviously, being in high school, there's not much you can do in terms of like direct, like clinical care, but volunteering in a hospital is one way. Of course, just basically where you can interact with people, whether even if it's just like volunteering in the pediatric clinic and going reading to kids who are there, like that's still a great way to kind of like immerse yourself in that like hospital environment and getting a better idea of what you might be interested in and what medicine is kind of like. But you won't have as many direct opportunities, but it's just really like following what you're enjoying and then making sure that you're giving yourself an opportunity to explore, especially in high school.
And adding on to that, I remember in high school, for me, I can agree with Tanaya. It was definitely hard to get things in high school. Like if you're under 16, and especially if you're under like 18, if you're not 18 yet, it's hard to get research opportunities in universities. But I think Aaliyah was the one that mentioned that she did a program at Stanford. I did one as well. I think it was called Stanford Explore, and it was 4 weeks, and they put us into like a medical school program. And since I'm low income and first gen, it was completely free for me. So there's awesome programs like that are available for you. And from that program, I got to meet amazing research mentors. So they let me in their lab, even though I was like not 18 at that time. So it's definitely possible. I also worked at the Exploratorium in the pier. I don't know if anyone here is from SF, but like anything science related, like just knowing that you have a love for STEM is such a big step already, even if you're not having that one-on-one work with patients, because you're going to have to take really rigorous science classes in undergrad is really going to test you, you want to be in this path. So just exposing yourself to as much STEM as possible, even if it's not medical related, is already really valuable. I think another advice that I could give is anything service related, like volunteering wise, is so good, because once you get to undergrad, it's kind of like a clean slate, and you will have a lot of like research labs, clinics that you can apply to, and it's kind of hard to use your high school experience when applying, especially for opportunities like this. So just having your foot in the door about already having experience, years of volunteer experience before coming into high school, could be such a big thing. And having your resume, cover letter ready and prepared will be really valuable once you go into college.
Yeah, going off what everyone said. So I also did a summer program at UC Davis. I mentioned in the comments. So the one I did is called Cosmos. Most of those programs, I remember I applied to the one in Stanford as well, but it was just too expensive for me to go at the time. And the one I did in Davis, they gave me like half of a scholarship. So it was like half off, which was also really nice. But those programs are usually, you apply like, I think late December or like early January the year you go, right? And they're usually during the summer. That definitely shaped my course in terms of like how I saw education even in high school. And kind of what Shannon was saying, I think it's important to get involved in STEM. And I know someone commented about taking AP classes. I definitely recommend taking AP Chem and like AP Bio and AP Math. I didn't take AP Bio, and I felt like at a big disadvantage compared to other people who did, because I struggled in intro bio classes because I never heard of it. But I didn't get involved in anything medical related. But for example, I got a lot involved in student council and a lot of service oriented, which helped me a lot when like I was in Davis and like when I worked as an RA or when I started like a club on campus, because I had those skills of organization and dealing with others. So I think find things you love and pursue them. Like don't have your only goal being like, I want to go to medical school and that's it. Like you're a full person. So search things like that. And what makes you different, right? Like you can like painting and you create a painting club as a de-stressor. And then you can have pre-med students that paint. So, there's definitely steps you need to do well in your classes. You need to like learn the basic STEM materials, but, find things that you love and that'll like prepare you as well.
Thank you all for the great advice. That was super helpful. I should have probably asked this earlier, but does anyone want to explain the process of applying to medical school?
I can, since I'm applying right now. So applications this year is a little bit different, but applications open usually on May 28th. And so med school applications have basically 3 processes. So you have to take your Mcat, which usually take like either a few months before application or a year before. And then you have primaries. Primaries are simply putting in your grades and you write a personal statement. Some schools screen, some schools don't screen, but most likely you're going to get secondaries. So secondaries are basically 3 to 5 essays that each school sends, and they're short answer essays. They're like, why do you want to go to our school? What are some challenges you faced? And then the admissions committee reads both your primaries and secondaries, and they're like, okay, do we want to give this person an interview? Yes or no, or like a maybe. If you get an interview, go into the 3rd stage, which is like interview process. And then you get invited to an interview. If you do well, you get in. But this process, even though it's like simple laid out like this, takes months. So for example, like you send your primaries like late May, beginning of June. You get secondaries like late June, early July. You maybe get interviews August to February. So med school application is kind of a waiting game. And people don't know is that it's not just Mcat. On top of Mcat, you have another test called Casper, which is basically like personality / situational test. And you have to take that before you apply. And now they're implementing another test. But I think it's just easier if you think like it's 3 steps, like primary, secondaries, interviews. It's a really long process. Like even if you apply like in May, June, you might only hear back in March of next year. So I would just, be prepared, take your MCAT in time. Like right now I'm stressed because of my MCAT, but yeah, it's definitely a long journey.
Thank you so much. So I noticed a lot of people ask this in the chat. Do you have any study tips for the MCAT or med school in general?
So I can start. For MCAT study tips, it's so my best advice would be timing. First of all, give yourself plenty of time to study. Before they extended the test, so the testing conditions are different because of COVID this year, but the test is typically 8 hours long. Before they extended to 8 hours, the recommended study time was about 3 months. Now that it's an 8 hour test, I've heard like 5 months is a good one, but you can just be a judge of your own character and how you do in your science classes and base it off of that for how long you think you'll need to study. But along the way, you're the first few, I would say the first month, you're basically going back and relearning all of your pre-med classes from undergrad. Depending on when you're taking the test too, this will also let you know and be a gauge for you of how long you need to go back and restudy all that material. If you're taking the test while you're still in undergrad, you probably won't need as much time. But if you're a few years out from undergrad, or a few years out from those classes, you need to give yourself a little bit more time to go back and remember all that stuff. And then once you get into the phase of doing the practice tests and really actually judging like how you're doing with the material, my biggest advice is to really like try to test in ideal conditions or not ideal conditions, but very similar to testing. So I had some friends who would test in the back of a library with their earplugs in, something like that, as best you can. And you want to actually follow the timing of the actual test day. You want to take those breaks, just do exactly what you'll do on test day. And then after each practice exam, go through every single question and really be honest with yourself about why you missed it. Even the ones that you get right, you want to go back and make sure, like, did I guess or did I actually get this right? But it's really a period of being very honest with yourself and very honest with yourself and give yourself plenty of time.
Yeah, going off what Aaliyah was saying regarding like taking the test as like you do in real life, like when you're on the test, I recommend like not taking the full 10-minute breaks. So when you take the MCAT, how it works is people have to like, you kind of have to tie yourself and they have to check if you have glasses and everything. Then they log you into a computer. When you want a break, you have to raise your hand. So the clock is ticking down. You have to raise your hand. Someone has to go there. They have to log in and then you leave. And then you get your snack or you go to the bathroom, you run, right? And you come back and then you have to like do the same process of like patting yourself down and then going in. They still have to log you in. So when I took the test, I was surprised because I felt like my breaks were like 5 minutes instead of like the 10 or 30 because I'm retaking it right now. So that's why I know. And then for MCAT, also really reviewing your practice test. So I have an Excel sheet where I have each question and I have like why I thought the answer was right, the explanation, why I got it wrong. And for me, I feel like in content, I'm like, okay, but I keep making silly mistakes, like not misreading the question or I'm having problems with math, right? But you need to analyze like, did I guess it? Did I get it right because I guessed it? Or did I get it wrong because I made a mistake reading it and I know the content? So you also learn how to take a test instead of just knowing what's on the test, if that makes sense.
Thank you. That was super helpful. So our next question is, what is the hardest part about being a pre-med student?
I can go first, and just like, sorry if you hear something in the background, it's my dog. I think the hardest part about being a pre-med student is like I kind of touched upon it earlier, but the feeling of like you just have to be perfect all the time. Like it's so scary when you look up these med schools, like your dream med schools, and you look up what's like the acceptance rate of this specific med school. It's scary to think that, you know, you might not get into the med school of your dreams, like you might not be able to pursue this career. Which it's just really hard, just trying to be like the perfect student. So that's why for many of like the high schoolers here, I would really do research on the undergrad that you're going to go to, and try to make sure that you're creating an environment that will really set you up to succeed. I've heard of like some programs being more competitive than others, and it could just be hard if you feel like you're competing with other people, but really, you know, you just have to find your community and build yourself up and be confident that you can do it, because if not, it could just be really hard. Like I know my freshman year of undergrad, I went through just like huge imposter syndrome because I felt like everyone else was already doing like these amazing things. But in reality, like everyone's journey is so different. So just try to be you and you'll find your way there.
Echoing off of that, that was perfectly, like, that sums up one of the biggest aspects. Really focus on yourself. Please, 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 I could not emphasize this enough. Do not compare yourself to others. That is the fastest way you're going to psych yourself out of it. You're going to think you're not good enough, and you're just going to start setting yourself up for failure when you were actually doing great. You're doing amazing. So please do not compare yourself to others. Another thing that can be hard is just maintaining that balance. It can be easy to feel like, again, that you're not doing enough. So you throw yourself into way, way too many things and you don't take that time for yourself. You need to make sure you have that time for yourself. You need to make sure you're doing things that you enjoy and that you have various outlets, because without that, you're going to burn out really quick. You're going to overtire yourself. Like, it's not going to be fun. And it is actually, even though it's challenging and there's some nights you're like, why am I doing this? It is fun. The whole journey is going to be fun because you're pursuing something that you're really interested in. You're following basically your dreams, and it's long, but it's rewarding. So definitely make sure you don't compare yourself to others, and make sure that you balance and make sure you take time for yourself.
I guess I can go. I think for me, the hardest thing is everything that's expected. You know, you're expected to not only excel in school, but you're expected to be in everything, right? You're expected to volunteer, you're expected to be in research and in student orgs and everything. And I remember when I first started college, I would like not get an A and I'd be like, that's it, I'm not going to med school. You know, I'd freak out. I'd be like, I'm not going to med school anymore. And especially if you're not in college yet, I would say it's really hard. Like what everyone said, I agree with everything, because I definitely felt the competition. Like my major is, everyone is basically pre-med in my major, which makes it really hard. But I think finding a community. So, you know, I have friends that are in pre-med and I love hanging out with them, but having friends who are in the same path, it's really nice because you get to encourage each other and they understand, you know, if you can't hang out, if you can't study, they're more understandable. For example, like one of my friends, like we're both working on med school applications, right? And I'm studying for the Mcat. So like every 2 days she texts me, how's Mcat studying going? And like you kind of get to share this struggle. And like that's also fun. Like you don't think studying until 2 a.m. with snacks is fun, but when you're doing it with friends and you're just kind of like in that struggle together, you're like, yeah, like this is what I'm meant to be doing, even though it's awful. So I definitely recommend finding people. Like I think that makes the like biggest difference.
Yeah, piggybacking off of what everyone else said, I totally agree with everything. That imposter syndrome was so real first few weeks at UCLA, along with UCLA being extremely competitive. It was, that just made it very difficult and very difficult to kind of really find my sense of community in the pre-med part of UCLA. And many of my friends did not continue with the pre-med track after their first quarter. So the community aspect was very hard for me. So I kind of got into a place of feeling really disconnected and isolated. But definitely having loved ones in your life who support you on that journey. And if you can't find friends within that pre-med circle, at least any type of community while you're in undergrad, your friends don't have to be on the same path as you, but as long as they're supporting you, checking in on you, and helping you not just get bogged down with this and, you know, kind of just go into the rabbit hole of the pre-med journey, and having that balance of keeping your life and yeah, like holding yourself accountable for saying, okay, I can be a pre-med student, but I'm also a human being. I'm a person who likes to do these fun things too. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. That was very helpful. So did any of you join clubs during your undergrad years that really gave you experience in the medical field?
Okay. So yes, I think I had just like 2 or 3 major clubs that I really invested most of my time in at UCLA that were pre-med. It's really going to a school like UCLA, it's really easy to kind of feel bombarded with so much around you. There's hundreds of clubs to choose from, and hundreds of clubs that all do the same thing, and everyone comes in to UCLA. I think it's like the number's like 50% of everyone who comes to UCLA wants to be, it's pre-med. So you're competing to get into these clubs. It just feels like another rat race. But definitely finding those club niches that are unique to you and unique to something that you like. For me, it was the Black Pre-Health Organization, where we focused on informing low-income minorities of Los Angeles about health and physical activity. So we put on health fairs for kids. And another club, Flying Samaritans, where we went on clinical trips to Tijuana. So, and in those clubs, you facilitate another community, and just it's a way to meet people on a humongous campus of thousands of students. But things like that just kept my passion going.
Yeah, those all sound really fun. As you were saying, I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. But so for me, I worked for most of college, so that like limited my time a lot. But I think one of the most important experience I had is a student-run clinic. So Davis has them, some colleges have them too, which is basically a clinic literally ran by med students and undergrads for like usually a community that's underserved. So I was part of the Latinx community. So I was serving the Latinx community, sorry. And that was really cool to like be in clinic and being part of like the examination and taking medical histories and getting medications and seeing like blood getting drawn. So for me, that was super cool because it gave me like a real aspect of medicine, seeing people who like literally need your help, otherwise they're not going to be okay, and seeing like all the knowledge that goes into that. So for me, that was really cool. Then something else is I started a Dr. Salborda's chapter at UC Davis, and Shannon's part of the board, and she's going to be president next year. And that was also really cool to kind of create a community that have the same passion, and we focused on making an impact as college students at Davis. So yeah, I think those are for sure my 2 biggest ones, but I think anything that gives you a sense of community and a sense of experience into what the medical world is helpful.
Yeah, and like adding to that, I'm also part of like different orgs on campus. Like one of them is Doctors Without Borders. Just like reiterating my major, I'm a global diseases biology major, so I really wanted something to do with like global health. So when Sophia started it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect for me. So I kind of do stuff around that. I do a lot of like humanitarian work, especially at my home country in the Philippines. But besides that, I mentioned it earlier. I'm so sorry. I mentioned it earlier, but I do research. I'm currently a research assistant, and I've already done 2 research projects, with one paper being peer reviewed to be released next year. So research is such a big thing, especially for all the UCs, and I really encourage if any of you are going to a UC to take advantage of it, because you get to work with like world-class professors, and most like med schools embrace research, like they love it. So it'll definitely help you in your application as well.
For me, there's very few clubs that I like, clubs that the universities have that I joined. I more so connected with organizations that were separate from my university but were nearby. For me, that was more so a personal decision because I enjoy connecting with a broader community, and I felt like those organizations could be an avenue for me to do so. I still work with the YWCA at Berkeley chapter, that's located in Berkeley, Oakland. And at the YWCA, we worked with the girls group mentoring program, which is like about advocacy. And I'm also currently in the process of establishing basically sexual health education program there. Other than that, I have volunteered at, like Shannon was saying, and Sophia and Aaliyah, like your university has clinics. Berkeley, we have the Berkeley Free Clinic, and I volunteer there as well. And also, like I mentioned before, I volunteered at the Women's Clinic. And so finding those clinics and organizations are always a great way to get involved if you're a little more shy about like going into like university clubs, or if you're afraid about, because there are like positions and it can be a bit intimidating at first because it seems like there are these officer positions and you're like, how do you get to know all these members? So definitely organizations are a great way to get involved in your community without having to like delve into all those politics. Other than that, I also work as a research assistant at my lab, and I saw so many questions about like, how do you get into research? First of all, don't be afraid to just reach out. Cold emailing does work, even though you might have to send like 30 emails before you finally get like 3 replies back. It does work. Otherwise, your university will often have like these research like servers or programs. Like at my school, it's called URAP. It's probably similar at some of the other UCs too. And you can apply, you can send like 3 applications to these labs that professors actually want students to take, they actually want to take on students, and they review your application. That's also another way to get into a lab as well.
I also wanted to piggyback on the research portion. I know it's kind of intimidating, like, oh my gosh, I have to get into research, but also don't limit yourself to just to being in a research lab and doing like bench work science. I felt it was really hard for me to get into research at UCLA because you have tons of students who are trying to get into research, and a lot of the PIs are only taking 1 to 2 undergrads per lab. So I somehow find an opportunity to be in health policy, which really aligns with my goals and where I see myself when I'm working a career in medicine. So just as long as you're doing something that you're passionate about and aligns with your goals and your passions in some kind of way. I think I have a friend who is also doing research on gender studies. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in a research lab.
Thank you. That was very insightful. So now with around 15 minutes left, we're going to start our open forum. So anyone here can ask a question to our panelists either in the chat, or you could just say it out loud.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So I am in the IB program, and I was just wondering, is it helpful to be in the IB program if you're interested in going to a med school, or was it helpful?
I think so. I wasn't in an IB program, but I virtually did every AP that I could in high school. I think, and I have friends who have done IB. I think like it helps when you go into undergrad, because a lot of my friends that were in IB programs are so eloquent and they're so good in their classes, because like same for AP students, you're used to a college level of like challenges already. So once you get into undergrad, you eventually get better grades because you already saw this kind of work, that was expected for you. But overall in med school, probably no, besides like the grades, unless you are applying for an accelerated program, then it might be more unique compared to a normal high school diploma.
Thank you.
I have a question. Do you guys think it's better to go to a tier 1 college for pre-med, or to do a tier 2 or a tier 3 and be a big fish in a small pond?
That's a really good question. I personally think you'd have to first be a judge of yourself and your own study habits. And do you think you can stay afloat in a tier 1 school where you take those things into account, that it's extremely competitive? You're in a lecture hall of 300 students, and even when you go to office hours, there's 20 to 30 students in the office hours as well. So I don't think it hurts to go to a tier 2 school, and I think that's a great option, of being that big fish in a small pond. As long as you stand out with your grades, no matter what your decision is, like you'll be successful.
Yes, going off, I I agree with everything because I felt like what you experienced at UCLA, I also really experienced at Davis, just because it's just so competitive and it's like a whole different field. I think, when you apply to medical school, like you're going to put in all your grades, right? You're going to put in all your extracurriculars. I think instead of looking at like the type of school, you think you should look at which place can I succeed the best at. Is it going to a small school? It's going to make a huge difference because you get one-on-one contact with professors and you get to be in a small classroom. That's how you learn. Then that should be like the answer for you, right? But is it a big school that has a lot of research opportunities, even though they're hard to come by and you're kind of stimulated in a different way? Like how you're going to grow? I think it's up to you. I think it's all about like what you can do versus what the school can do for you. You might have to fight harder to get different experiences, but in the end, it's all about you. Like on your application, you do put your school, but what matters is your experiences and your grades. So I think finding a school that fits your needs is the best thing.
Yeah, and like adding on to that, I see like in the chat some people asked about like state schools and community college. I mentioned like the Explore program that I did at Stanford. One of my TAs like went to Arizona State and like, now he's at Stanford. And I know a med student at UCSF who went to SF State. So honestly, being in a state school might be more of an advantage, especially if you can shine brighter compared to like the other students. But keeping in mind what everyone else has said. And for community college, no, like I don't know where the myth came from, but it's so not true that community college is looked down upon. And I put it in the chat, but like big schools like Stanford, they have specific community college programs that are free for community college students to take advantage of. Like I think you can go to their med school and like experience the med school, and it's just for community college students. So I would check out those programs for you because yeah, they do welcome community college students.
I want to ask something. Can I? At the first, did you feel that you were not going to be able to organize yourself with the things you had to do and with the things you want to do?
I feel like it's really easy to get lost in that struggle. Definitely, I know there had been times where I really wanted to do this one thing, whether it was like even as simple as like with your friends or like an organization that you want to do versus the things that you had to do. I think the biggest thing to really remember is like at the end of the day, what is going to benefit you and what you need at that point in time. If it's something like, okay, you need like that outlet, you need that mental break, for sure, go do that. But definitely don't get carried away in those other things and then ignore the things that you have to do and those responsibilities that you have. So it's really like, again, it's like a really hard balancing act. You're going to accidentally tip one way versus the other throughout your time, but just trying to maintain that, like trying your best to maintain that balance is going to be really important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think all 4 years of college will really be that struggle of really teaching yourself how to prioritize and manage everything. So it'll definitely be a struggle, but it'll get better with time. And just as you're maturing as a student as well, you'll just really learn how to prioritize. But definitely, I think implementing self check-ins with yourself and say, okay, do I need a break? Do I need more time for myself and to do the things you want to do? And assessing if you're just not giving yourself enough of that me time and enough of a break. But it'll take practice, and it's possible. It's doable.
If you had to pick one thing that you did in high school that like you learned the most from, that kind of like helped you the most in undergrad, like what would you pick like, that you did?
I think for me was the summer program I did. I did it between my junior year and senior year of high school. That was called Cosmos at UC Davis. That really shaped just like how I looked at science and how I looked at learning, because you're in a like kind of college environment and you get to explore all these really cool things. And that one was at Davis, right? And that's like one of the reasons I picked Davis. But I think just finding those kind of cool different experiences that you get to do during the summer, or just something else, I think that really shapes how you see college, something that prepares you to go forward and gives you that mentality of like, yeah, this is going to be hard, but I have the tools to do it. I think that really shaped where I am. And I advise anyone who's interested in like, not even pre-med, if you just want to do like vet school, there's a bunch of summer programs like this, but I think a lot of people don't know about them. So I recommend looking into them, even if you're going to college next year, just doing something over the summer like that, I think is really helpful.
Hi, I asked in the chat, but I know like going into the medical field is really hard, and I was wondering if you guys had any like time management strategies or how you guys like studied and prepared for tests in general.
I can start. For me, before going into college, like I remember I could study for like a test, like maybe 2 or 3 days before and still do fine. But I still remember, even though it's been a little bit since that first semester, that did not fly in college. So definitely splitting, basically breaking down the work where you're reviewing or doing something with the material or your class for at least just an hour, just at least an hour, at least like 6 days a week. You can definitely have like that one day just for yourself, but like at least 6 days a week, you're doing at least 1 hour, especially like that really got me through chem and OChem. Definitely just like constantly working with the material every day, just even for an hour. Even it meant like I was doing like maybe 5 or 6 problems in a day, or just like reviewing the notes or something like that. That is going to help you immensely in terms of keeping that information there and becoming more comfortable with that information, especially. So it's definitely carving out time for those various subjects and not trying to do a huge chunk in one day, because it's not going to be as nice as like when you split it up. And I learned that the hard way by first going into college, but it's definitely a lot more beneficial if you split it up.
Thank you.
Do you ever consider other career fields before you decide on medicine?
I can go for this one. Yes, like I feel like every day, especially after if you're suffering from like finals, like she's talking about OChem, if you're suffering from your OChem midterms or something like that, like you're going to be considering a career switch all the time. And I think just suffering from those moments and reaffirming that you want to be in medicine is kind of like a power booster, and it helps you study. But yes, I do. I know that this is like a Girl Genius conference. Like they do such amazing work, and just seeing them, I can also see myself doing STEAM. Like I love social media, so I've done work with like Uber. I've had mentors at like Facebook, and just thinking about that as like a route that I can take after I graduate seems so much more easy than like going through years and years of like medical school and like more tests and exams. But just reaffirming yourself. But I am keeping myself open, because like what everyone said, you never know what's gonna happen in the future, and you never know what you're gonna fall in love with. It's the same thing from what Aaliyah said. Like most of my friends were pre-meds when they came into college, and then after taking those hard classes, like a lot of them aren't pre-med anymore. So just keep yourself open to all the opportunities for you, and, be mindful that medicine is not the only path that you can take.
And I just want to briefly add on to that. I definitely, even now, like I can see myself, I could go into advocacy and nonprofit work. I could go into politics, because like those are definitely huge interests of mine, along with like writing. And I think recognizing that, yes, you will have different interests, and yes, there will be other careers that might be like enticing, but I think finding a way to incorporating it into kind of like your plan, or kind of incorporating it into your future career. For me, yes, I do want to go into medicine, but I'd also love to be a published author one day. And later on, I'm going to continue to work in advocacy and nonprofits. So it's definitely like being open to like, just because you're going to medicine, that is not your one all be all. You'll definitely be able to incorporate your other interests into what you do. So definitely be open to that as well.
Yes, I totally agree with what Tanaya said. Just you're a well-rounded person with different interests, and medicine is not just a one size fits all career. You can incorporate those different things that you love later down the line. So that's definitely what I've been doing on my journey with the different parts of what I love.
I have a quick question. How are you able to stay competitive with your application when applying to med school, because those acceptance rates are really low and you really have to do your best to shine?
My best answer is no matter what, is staying true to yourself and really knowing why you're choosing medicine, and being passionate about that and doing things that doing engaging in activities that strengthen that passion, because at the end of the day, almost everyone has the same GPA. Everyone has those good MCAT scores. So at the end of the day, what will set you apart is you and yourself and what you bring to the table. And along those lines, I'd also recommend definitely finding a medical school and applying to medical schools that align with your personal goals, and a school that you could see yourself at and see yourself shining at, and having a great time with other peers in the same medical class.
Have any of you guys looked into like MD PhD programs in the past, and potentially going to a more research focused area as opposed to like being a straight up doctor?
I have. So I'm looking into multiple, and it's like for a lot of reasons. Because one, a big thing, especially if you're like low income and first gen like me, if you do an MD PhD program, they cover your entire medical school and your PhD. So it's definitely a plus, and different schools have different programs. Like I know for Stanford, which is one of the big schools I'm looking for, they do like a year of med school, and then you stop for 2 years to do your PhD, and then you continue with med school, and then you finish off your last year PhD. So it's different for all schools, and I would really do research because it is cost effective. And if you love the research aspect of like medicine and STEM, I would really recommend it.
I think we're going to wrap up our pre-med panel now. Thank you so much to all of the amazing panelists. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did too. So now we're going to wait a few more minutes before we hand it off to Izzy for her research internships workshop. Thank you guys so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me and like all of us too. And definitely I probably echoed with the rest of the panelists, but if you have any questions or anything, you guys are free to contact me. I think our Instagrams are on there in the post that that was there originally, and you can always like DM us questions or anything. We'd be happy to help you.
Yes, definitely. Thanks again for having us.